welcome to the Trent England Show. It's Monday. What did we learn from the fake strike? It is, I'll tell you too, I drove by the Capitol a little while ago, and there's still a big police presence up there. I mean, obviously there are some folks up there. There are some schools closed today. I think pretty much everybody is scheduled to open tomorrow. But it's time now to step back this week and assess and consider what did we learn from the fake strike in Oklahoma. And what I want to talk about today is just understanding the different incentives, the different forces at work in politics. It's not all, I met with, even just last Friday, had some wonderful opportunities to sit down and talk with various teachers and people involved in all of this about what they thought they were doing, what they thought they were going to get out of it, what they were surprised by. And one of the things that I come across over and over again is people forget it's not all about policy. You might be all about policy, I might be all about policy, but at the end of the day, none of us are really all about policy. Government is where interests in policy and politics and just raw emotion all sort of slosh up and mix up together. And for a lot of people, and I think this is what especially teachers, but also parents, anybody else watching all of this needs to understand, there are agendas at play out there. And look, there are agendas at play on all sides. I mean, this is not, we're talking about one particular political instance, the fake strike in Oklahoma that shut down schools for the last 2 weeks. But I'm not saying it's unique to that, far from it. But look, what was going on last week was intertwined with the interests of some powerful national political groups, including, let's take a look at, I mentioned this on Friday, but including people like the folks who run the New York Times, right? They have an ideology, they have an agenda. I pointed out how funny this headline is that they ran last Friday. Oklahoma teachers end walkout after winning raises and additional funding. They could have ran the headline, Oklahoma teachers begin walkout after winning raises and additional funding. Of course, they didn't do that. And when you follow the national press, hopefully you didn't, because it was dizzying. It was loads and loads of phony stories about all kinds of things that painted Oklahoma in the picture as if every one of our schools was like a broken down barn at the end of a gravel road, right? That's, if you go and you read The Economist, you read the New York Times, that is the picture they wanted to paint. They have an agenda, right? And it's not the same agenda as the average Oklahoma teacher in an Oklahoma classroom who has real needs, who has real things that he or she would like to see change in the state of Oklahoma, but it's not the same as the agenda of the folks running the New York Times or the National Education Association or the American Federation of Teachers, right? These are all national groups with a political agenda, and they're not interested in Oklahoma public policy. I'm sorry to have to tell you that. You probably knew that already, but some people really don't understand that a lot of what was driving and funding the fake strike that shut down schools in Oklahoma for 2 weeks was a national political agenda, not a policy agenda, but a political agenda. The New York Times followed up on this story with a story about how all this is really going to hurt Republicans. Surprise, surprise, right? That is, that's what they hope. Look, I'm just to be absolutely clear. What about the OEA, the Oklahoma Education Association? They have tried to parlay all of this into politics and political campaigns as fast as they possibly can. We put up the image of that email that we got a copy of this. If you have seen this anywhere else, we need to hear from you. I need to hear from you. Go to the comments on the show and let us know, because we have had a parent tell us, say, look, I don't know how the union got my email, but they're now, and the parent suspects that it was the school district that actually is giving parent emails to the Oklahoma Education Association. If we can prove that, if you can prove that, let us know, because that would frankly be a violation of privacy and potentially illegal. But the union, of course, they're parlaying all of this into campaign politics. And for the OEA, some of it's about public policy, but a lot of it is about politics. The kind of people who go and work at a union like the OEA, they have a political agenda, they have an ideology, and I'm sure. I don't want to claim that they're not interested in public policy at all. But a lot of people, by the end of the fake strike, were saying, "Well, wait a second." They're saying that they have to raise this tax, but not that tax, and this tax, but they don't care about this tax. They don't care about efficiencies. They don't care about more flexibility. They don't care about allowing, you know, local decisions to make school districts more efficient. Right? A lot of people are scratching their heads and saying, the OEA doesn't seem to. They don't seem to have the same agenda as actual teachers. Well, they're not actual teachers. They're people who went into teaching and then decided that they wanted to go into politics. That's the kind of people who run the OEA. So look, that is one of the things that we ought to learn from the fake strike in Oklahoma. You might be about public policy. I know most of the teachers I talked to over the last 2 weeks up at the Capitol, they were interested in public policy. They wanted some policy changes. But I think a lot of them by the end of last week felt like they had gotten ran over by a bunch of different political agendas crisscrossing that were hard to understand. We're going to try to keep unpacking some of this on the program this week, but I wanted to start off with some of these national groups and just pointing out, look, policy, politics, different things, and we've got to understand that if we want to understand what has been going on and what always is going on up at the state capitol. Okay. Not far from the state capitol, we have the Oklahoma State Department of Education, which responded to the NAEP scores. These are the National Math and Reading Test scores that come out every 2 years that compare all of the states. You might not like testing. I was going to say I might not like testing, but I love testing. I mean, I don't like, I like taking tests, right? I'm just admitting full transparency here. The production staff are laughing and shaking their heads. I was that guy, right? Like tests, that's great. I get to get out my number 2 pencil. But look, these are important. Yeah, these are important tests because they allow us to compare nationwide. It's just math, it's reading, it's simple stuff. These are benchmark tests that do compare on math and reading in 4th and 8th grade how Oklahoma students are doing compared to the rest of the nation, and it's not good. In fact, it's worse than it was a couple of years ago. Oklahoma actually had seen some improvement a couple of years ago in these NAEP test scores, and now we have dropped back down. And Joy Hoffmeister is out there saying, and we've got the email here from the Superintendent of Public Instruction, she's out there saying, well, this is because we don't have enough money. This is because we have emergency certified teachers. I want to walk through this email real quick. Okay, NAEP scores show Oklahoma losing ground, falling behind national average, and she says in this email, scores drop in wake of teacher shortage. Well, let's walk through this real quick. So she offers us a chart here, 4th grade reading trends and Reading Sufficiency Act funding. And what this shows, looking at 4th grade reading scores, what happened is Oklahoma scores were very, very bad in 2013, but they jumped. Actually, it was the 3rd highest jump of any state in the country in 4th grade reading in 2015. So the last time this test was taken, Oklahoma students jumped. We were ahead of the national average. This was very good. And now in 2017, we have dropped back down, back to where we were, back beneath the national average, right? This is not good. And what they put on this chart is some education funding for the Reading Sufficiency Act. But the interesting thing here is they're blaming this funding. They're saying, well, we had $0, and then we jumped up to have $6.5 million, and now we've dropped back to have $4.5 million, and that explains us going back all the way to where we were. So apparently the value of $4.5 million at the State Department of Education is the same value as 0. I mean, you follow me here, right? We spent 0, and then we spent 6.5, and then we dropped it by $2 million, right? We're still spending $4.5 million on this particular program, and we went back to where we were spending 0, and they want to tell us it's all about the money? Obviously something, all I'm saying, I'm not saying it's not about the money at all. All I'm saying is obviously the story's a little more complicated, and there's something else going on rather than just that. Okay, let's jump down to this other chart. They want to say it is emergency teacher certifications. This is part of what is hammering us, and you can see that number has been going up. The emergency certifications, that number has been increasing in Oklahoma. But wait a second. If we bounce back up, so in 2013 the scores were not good. In 2015 the scores got a lot better. In 2017 the scores have dropped back down. Let's go back. So We're jumping around in this email here, but let's go back and look at what happened between 2013 and 2015 when it comes to emergency certified teachers. And lo and behold, what do we have? We have a big jump from 189 to 1,063. We have a big increase in emergency certified teachers. I wonder, somebody go back and look for this for me if you want to. Do you think that 2 years ago, did they put out a press release? Did Joy Hoffmeister put out a press release saying, NAEP scores are up because of an increase in emergency certified teachers? I mean, come on. Look, I don't know. Maybe what they should be arguing for is better math and statistics classes in Oklahoma high schools so that we can hire people at the Oklahoma State Department of Education who actually understand how to make an argument that makes sense when they are trying to explain why our NAEP scores are not very good. Okay, let's go down. I have one more thing I want to show you here. This is particularly frustrating to me because of my own personal experience in high school. I just want to say that as we look at some of these numbers. And I went to an inner city high school. It was a very diverse place. And I always get frustrated when I look at people who make lots of money and feel very good at themselves, good about themselves, because they spend their time writing and talking about the gaps between different groups of students and what they wish they could do to solve these education inequality problems that they're so good at pointing out and perpetuating. And here is what they say down in this press release, this email that the Oklahoma State Department of Education sent out a couple of days ago. They point out, okay, we have some gaps. These are things we should be concerned about, but look at the political correctness that just oozes through all of this. So they point out black students, an average score 18 points, looking at fourth grade reading, this is all about fourth grade reading, black students an average 18 points lower than white students, Hispanic students an average 12 points lower than white students, Native American students an average 8 points lower than white students. Look at the next one. Look at the next one here. 2017 female students lower by an average of 8 points. No, wait. This is the only one that's listed as higher. Students are higher than the other students are being compared to here. Female students are 8 points higher than male students. Wouldn't it actually fit with this list to say in 2017 male students had an average score 8 points lower than female students? That's how everything else here is listed. But when it's male and female, the politically correct dictionary says you have to talk about females doing better, not male students doing worse, right? So they're carefully at the Oklahoma State Department of Education, carefully following the political correctness manual. And what do we get? What is the very last line here that should be the first line? In 2017, students who were eligible for free or reduced price school lunches, an indicator of low family income, had an average score not 8 points lower, not 12 points lower, not 18 points lower, 23 points lower than for the students they're being compared to here, right? I mean, in other words, if you solve the poverty gap in education, probably a lot of these other gaps go away. But we have to bury that. We have to put that last in the list because the political correctness folks tell us what matters really is race. It's melanin, it's skin color, right? What matters is what you look like, right? And then, gender sort of matters, but if girls are doing better than boys, then we celebrate that. We don't point out that the boys, that means, are doing worse than the girls, right? And then at the end you footnote, well, yeah, and poverty actually makes a much bigger difference than any of these other things. I think it's so frustrating, and I mentioned my own high school experience. So frustrating that where I went to high school, and I'm sure this is true down the street at Oklahoma City Public Schools and across our state, if you are poor and white and falling behind, what this email reminds us is that the people who run our schools care less about you than if you're poor and black and falling behind, or poor and Hispanic and falling behind, or poor and Native American and falling behind. And I don't understand why we put up with that, especially in a great state like Oklahoma, where we all are, these days pretty good, I think, at getting along, especially when we don't have the political correctness police out there trying to make us feel like we shouldn't. But anyhow, those are my thoughts on this silly email about the sad news that Oklahoma students have slipped in, especially in reading. You think about fourth grade reading. The Oklahoman, I do want to call out the Oklahoman for a great editorial about all this that they had this morning. The Oklahoman points out that one of the changes, if you're actually looking for a policy change on reading, it's the weakening of the reading sufficiency law, right, that actually was the explanation, most likely, for that jump in reading scores. What happened right before Oklahoma jumped in reading scores, fourth grade reading scores? We implemented a law that said, if you can't read, you can't move on from third grade. If you have to be able to read in order to move on to fourth grade. And that has been attacked by the political correctness police, by parents who, care more about their kids' feelings than their kids' learning, by teachers and administrators who find that very difficult, and by this whole idea that we have in education that's so absurd that kids' age should be assumed to correlate for their learning, and that kids who happen to have their ages, within 1 year of each other should all be lumped together and moved along together. From the perspective of a parent who has done some homeschooling, right, you realize just how absurd and stupid it is to do education that way. But anyhow, that's how we do it in Oklahoma, and the weakening of the Reading Sufficiency Act was the status quo protecting itself to the detriment of Oklahoma students, as we can see here. And you don't get any mention of that from the Oklahoma State Department of Education, but the Oklahoman points it out. Good for them. Okay, what happens when we don't educate our kids? Well, I got to hit one national story, and then I'm going to get to our little bit of around the world roundup, reminding us that it could be worse. What happens when we don't learn economics? We think that the answer to bad trade policy is crony capitalism. I just wanted to point this out because this was so frustrating. If you believe in free markets or just understand why free markets work, have you seen that the Trump administration now is saying that, well, yeah, we are sort of stirring up a little trade war with these countries around the world, and China in particular is striking back against U.S. agriculture. Well, we've got an answer for that. We'll collect up a bunch of money from other Americans and we'll give it to farmers who are being hurt by the trade war that the Trump administration started. So we have the answer to bad trade policy is crony capitalism, in the opinion of some folks in the Trump administration. Okay, that's what happens when you don't learn economics in school. But it could be worse. It could be worse. We could be in Venezuela, where even Bloomberg News acknowledges that after a dozen years of Venezuela's anti-U.S. campaign and their so-called revolution in Venezuela, they are suffering from mass poverty and mass migration, people fleeing that country. There was a meeting of the countries of North and South America that took place at the end of last week. And one of the things that came out is just how concerned a lot of Venezuela's neighboring countries are about what's going on there, and the fact that the effects of socialist tyranny don't stay at home because people are fleeing that country in dire poverty, trying to simply keep themselves and their children alive. Next story is for the reporters out there who feel like, oh no, Donald Trump tweeted something mean about reporters, and so now we live in a police state. It could be worse. It could be worse. A reporter in Russia died over the weekend. He was sending messages to his friends saying that he was seeing armed men surrounding his apartment and in the stairwell outside of his apartment, and he then fell to his death from his fifth floor balcony. But don't worry, local police authorities investigated and ruled it a natural death. Of course. That from Putin's Russia. Okay, that's all I've got for the Trent English Show today. Thanks for watching. We're going to keep talking about what's going on in education, what we can learn from the fake strike, what's going to happen next, how the legislative session is going to wrap up. It's probably going to wrap up pretty soon. We'll have that all for you on the Trent English Show this week. Be sure to subscribe on iTunes, SoundCloud. Where else are we? Facebook, YouTube. That's the one I was looking for. YouTube. You can comment in pretty much any of those places, but Facebook is the best place to share your thoughts with me, questions you want us to ask, people you want us to interview. We're going to talk to a charter school leader next week on the program. I'm really excited about that. I'll share more details coming up this week. Thanks for watching.